In the decades after the Second World War, Christmas in Britain settled into a rhythm shaped by routine rather than spectacle. The 1960s and 1970s were years of social change, but December still arrived with familiar signals, shorter days, colder streets, and shared habits understood without explanation. These traditions were not designed to impress. They mattered because they were repeated, widely recognized, and quietly agreed upon by millions of people at the same moment in the year. This film is not an exercise in nostalgia, nor a claim that life was better then. It is a record of vanished rituals that once organized time and behavior across homes, schools, shops, and workplaces. Many disappeared not suddenly, but gradually, as technology, economics, and daily habits shifted. What remains is the memory of how ordinary people marked Christmas together, through actions that felt natural, inevitable, and communal. Number 10. In the weeks before Christmas, department stores transformed their upper floors into temporary grottos. Children queued along carpeted corridors, coats damp from sleet, clutching paper tickets. Inside, artificial snow clung to painted plywood, and a man in a heavy suit smelled faintly of tobacco and fabric glue. These were not elaborate theme park spectacles. They were local, slightly improvised, and identical from year to year. For working families, this was often the only encounter with Father Christmas outside the home. The tradition faded as high street department stores declined, replaced by out-of-town shopping centers and later online retail. Insurance costs, staffing, and changing expectations made the modest grotto seem outdated. What vanished was not the character of Father Christmas, but the shared ritual of encountering him in the same civic spaces where people bought socks, kettles, and school shoes. Number 9. On Christmas Eve, streets across Britain filled with the sound of brass. Local Salvation Army bands stood outside post offices and corner shops, breath visible in the cold, playing carols from creased sheet music. Shoppers paused, coins dropped into open instrument cases, and the smell of roasting chestnuts or damp wool lingered in the air. This was not performance for applause, but a seasonal presence woven into everyday errands. The practice declined as pedestrianized shopping areas changed ownership and regulation, and as fewer people carried coins. Amplified music replaced live bands, and charitable giving moved indoors. The disappearance of these street carols marked the quiet loss of unscheduled encounters, where Christmas announced itself not through decoration, but through sound echoing off brick and stone. Number 8. Schools once closed their term with full nativity plays performed in assembly halls that smelled of polish and wet coats. Wooden stages creaked, tinsel was reused year after year, and parents sat on folding chairs, programs printed on thin paper. Children learned lines by repetition, not rehearsal apps, and every school followed roughly the same script. These plays reflected a shared cultural literacy, even among families who were not regular churchgoers. Over time, concerns about inclusivity, changing curricula, and tighter schedules reduced or removed the traditional nativity from many schools. It was replaced by winter concerts or neutral productions. What disappeared was not only a religious story, but a national moment where the same narrative was performed simultaneously in thousands of similar halls. Number 7. In the days before Christmas, butchers displayed birds hung in rows behind glass, their skin pale under fluorescent light. Customers queued patiently, orders written in pencil on brown paper. The smell of sawdust and raw poultry mixed with cold air rushing in each time the door opened. Choosing a turkey was a social act, discussed openly with neighbors in line. This ritual declined as supermarket standardized packaging and frozen poultry became common. Convenience replaced conversation. The disappearance of the butcher's queue removed a slow, communal preparation for Christmas Day, replacing it with anonymous transactions. The bird remained, but the shared anticipation, measured in waiting time and familiar faces, quietly ended. Number 6. On Christmas morning, many households tuned their radios before breakfast. The set crackled slightly as the King's College Choir broadcast from Cambridge, voices clear and restrained. This moment required silence. Children waited, adults listened, and the house paused. For families without television, the radio remained central. For others, it still carried authority. As television schedules expanded and later recordings became available, the necessity of listening live diminished. The broadcast continued, but the ritual of gathering specifically around the radio faded. What vanished was the sense that the nation was briefly synchronized, attentive to the same sound at the same time, before the day properly began. Number 5. Workplaces in the 1960s and 70s often closed early on Christmas Eve, sometimes after a brief gathering. Offices smelled of sherry and cigarette smoke, paper hats perched awkwardly on heads. Gifts were modest, often pooled collections or novelty items. This was a pause recognized across industries, from factories to council offices. As economic pressures increased and service economies expanded, early closures became less common. Shift work, extended hours, and later globalized schedules eroded the shared endpoint to the working year. The disappearance of this moment marked the loss of a collective exhale, when labor stopped together and Christmas officially began. Number 4. Doorstep carol singing once involved neighbors knocking unannounced, songbooks in hand. Voices were uneven, sometimes shy, sometimes loud, and the cold made breathing sharp. A door would open, a song performed, and a brief exchange followed. This relied on familiarity and trust within streets where people recognized one another. As neighborhoods changed and concerns about safety grew, the practice declined. Televisions kept people indoors, and organized events replaced informal visits. The fading of doorstep carols reflected a shift away from spontaneous participation, removing a ritual that blurred the line between performer and audience. Number 3. Christmas cards were once written by hand in the evenings, lists kept carefully to ensure no one was missed. Post boxes overflowed, and the sound of mail dropping through letterboxes became constant. Cards displayed winter scenes or robins, and they sat on mantelpieces throughout the season. Rising postage costs, changing communication habits, and later digital messages reduced this practice. The card did not disappear entirely, but its ubiquity did. What was lost was the visible accumulation of acknowledgement, physical proof that relationships were being maintained through effort and time. Number 2. On Christmas Day afternoon, families across Britain gathered around their televisions for the Queen's speech. The set warmed the room, its glow reflecting off tinsel. Conversation stopped, plates were set aside, and attention focused forward. This was not entertainment, but ritual, offering continuity and reassurance. As channels multiplied and viewing habits fragmented, the shared pause became optional. Some watched later, others not at all. The speech remained, but its role as a unifying national moment weakened. Its fading prominence signaled the erosion of fixed communal schedules in favor of personal choice. Number 1. Perhaps the most quietly powerful tradition was the near-universal closure of shops on Christmas Day. Streets were empty, shutters down, and silence settled over towns and cities. This was enforced not by law alone, but by consensus. Families knew that nothing could be bought, errands were impossible, and time was contained within the home. The smell of cooking filled houses from morning, and visits happened on foot. This created a rare sense of order, where the entire nation paused together. As retail deregulation expanded and consumer expectations shifted, Christmas Day trading returned in stages. What disappeared was the shared certainty that the day belonged to no one and everyone at once, a collective agreement to stop. Taken together, these traditions reveal a pattern. They were not extraordinary events, but repetitions that created structure. They worked because they were predictable and widely understood. Their disappearance did not happen through a single decision, but through many small changes in how people lived, worked, and communicated. Remembering them is not about longing for a better past, but recognizing how shared time once functioned. If any of these moments are familiar, they are part of a common history rather than a private memory. You are invited to share your recollections in the comments, to add detail to the record. Britain Rewind exists to preserve these ordinary rituals, and by subscribing, you help ensure they are not forgotten.